So next up, though, I think we have a movie that both of us enjoy to a certain extent. Sort of a 1985 vampire classic, Fright Night, which is I think a very popular movie among horror fans. In the movie, a teenage boy finds that his next door neighbors, new next door neighbors, one happens to be a vampire, and so he of course freaks out about this and tries to get the police onto this vampire. Of course, that's it works. So he goes to a sort of a television horror show host. It's just a washed up guy who used to appear in vampire movies back in the 50s and 60s. Tries to get his help, and eventually he does. And then, of course, the vampires know that this kid knows. So I know it's, in my opinion, it's a pretty wild ride, no matter how many times you've seen it. I would say this before I throw it to Chucky. Fright Night's probably one of my favorite vampire movies. I think I mean, it has a very 80s vibe. There's a lot of great scenes in the movie, and personally for me, there's really no point in the movie when I'm feeling unengaged. It's a movie I've seen many, many times, and I never have any hesitation when I throw this into my DVD player.
Yeah, we know that I'm not a huge fan of vampire movies, but I think this is right up there. I can't really think of any other vampire movies I'd put over it. I think Chris Sarandon plays a pretty nifty vampire. You know, he's got a very different persona, I guess, to what you'd see in a lot of other typical vampire movies. It does have that nice 80s vibe with its music and fashion and everything else. And I think the vampires themselves, at least towards the end of the movie, and you can probably see that from some of the images, there's some really cool makeup going on there, makeup effects. Yeah, so I think as far as vampire movies go, it doesn't get too much better for me. I enjoy the movie. I don't really have a whole lot of negatives to say about it, but at the same time, I don't find it, it's not going to break my all-time favorite list or anything. It's just a movie I enjoy, and I'll certainly rewatch every now and then, but it's just not overly special to me either.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what it is about this movie that works for me. No, just to clarify, I don't find the movie perfect. I do think the main character, uh, God, what's his name? Ragsdale.
William Ragsdale. Yeah.
Yeah, honestly, I find his character somewhat iffy. The acting isn't the best in my opinion, but pretty much everybody else I enjoy watching, especially Roddy McDowall. I think his character of Peter Vincent is extraordinarily fun. Some scenes that really stand out to me are, the scenes when Peter Vincent finds himself face to face with, an actual vampire trying to fight for his life. The first attack by the character who becomes a vampire, I thought was fantastic. And then he meets the character again later in the movie, and that turns into, in my opinion, a surprisingly emotional scene for like a somewhat light-hearted vampire movie. So I definitely think the character of Peter Vincent really brings this movie a lot of zest, and without that character, I don't think this movie would be nearly as memorable as it is nowadays.
The one thing about this movie that kind of just irks me a little is, growing up having watched a lot of the show Married with Children, and we've got Marcy from Married with Children playing the what would you call it, the object of desire for the vampire.
Does it not do it for you?
Yeah, I'm used to seeing Al Bundy talk about her having no tits and not being an overly attractive woman. I mean, she's just a very plain woman to me. So, that's just, I don't know, it's one of those things where you just can't help but think about it, and it doesn't really do a whole lot for me there. Yeah, it doesn't hurt the movie either.
Yeah, I think it was sort of interesting when Chris Sheridan's character, the vampire, sees her and sort of like immediately gets attracted to her. That club sequence, I remember when I was a kid, I thought the whole club sequence was so boring, but watching it nowadays, I sort of like the idea, just slow dancing, with this woman. The other guy can't do anything about it. He tries and he nearly gets his arm broken. And I think it's a very sort of a tense scene. And of course, the music also really goes a long way to make the scene somewhat memorable. I don't know. This is one of those movies that it's difficult for me to talk about why it exactly works, but I think so many of the positive elements come together to make at least for me, a really enjoyable experience. And the funny thing is, I actually don't even know if this is my favorite vampire movie, but I do know it's pretty much always in my top five.
Yeah, I can't think of really any other vampire movies that I'd favor over it. And I certainly can barely think of many vampire movies that I enjoy as a whole. So, to be honest, there's not a whole lot more I have to really say about it. It's an enjoyable movie. It just doesn't do anything much more than that for me. I enjoy it. I don't particularly look to any specific scene and say that was fantastic. I mean, there's a few scenes in the movie that I enjoy. I could say, that was good, but nothing that I would go back and watch just because of that one scene.
Out of interest, do you have any opinions, be it negative or positive, on Evil Art?
I know he's got a bit of a following from this movie. I personally don't really care that much about his character in the movie. I mean,
his dinners in the oven, though.
Yeah. The funny thing is, I saw that actor just recently in another movie. It was like a teen sex comedy. Like he was playing the nerd that these guys were trying to get laid. Yeah, I don't know. It probably fit that role a little more because he is quite a nerdy guy.
Well, apparently, and you may know this, but apparently this same actor has been in a lot of sort of gay porn movies throughout the 90s, which is sort of an interesting fact that I didn't know until today, to be honest.
Yeah, sure, you didn't. I bet you got a few of those movies.
Only like 15.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard that at some point, and then you also hear, I think, what's its name? I know her as Marcy from Married with Children, and isn't she a lesbian?
I honestly have no idea. I will say that character actually did do a whole lot for me, one way or the other. Yeah, I guess when it comes to Fright Night, I think a lot of things about this movie work. I think some of the more lighthearted moments, a lot of them including Peter Vincent, Roddy McDowall, I thought they were pretty amusing. The whole scene when they're trying to convince William Ragsdale's character that, the guy's not a vampire, I enjoyed that. Also, like Chucky mentioned, the makeup and special effects are really great, especially toward the, final 25 minutes. There's this one scene where the sort of vampire, sort of deteriorates, his body sort of just falls apart, it becomes nothing but bones. I thought that looked fantastic. I don't know, there's a lot about this movie I enjoy, and when it comes to things I don't care for, it mostly just comes down to a few questionable acting scenes. Generally I really like this one. I'd probably give it an 8.5, and I'd probably move it up to a 9, because it's one I enjoy pretty much anytime I watch it.
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy the movie quite a lot. I give the movie an 8 out of 10. I kind of just sneak it into an 8. It's not a strong 8, but yeah, that's where I give it. An enjoyable movie overall. Like you said, it's got some really cool makeup effects, especially towards the end when we see a lot more actual vampire type carnage. Very 80s vibe with its music, and I think Chris Sarandon's got quite a charismatic character that's enjoyable to watch.